Hey everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another Techstrong TV broadcast. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon. Today is Tuesday, April 5th, and we've got an amazing lineup on today's show for you. We get things kicked off with a conversation between Alan and Arnie Lopez, who is the Vice President for Worldwide Systems Engineering over at Sky High Security. This is actually a launch of Sky High Security out of McAfee Enterprise. So it offers SSE, Cloud Security, ZTNA, and CASB. Lots of acronyms there, but the new portfolio company was created to satisfy what is becoming a major growing cloud security requirements for large and small organizations. Definitely right place, right time, and right technology as well. So Arnie and Alan talk about the rise of the new company and what it means to the market. After that, Alan speaks with Clint Sharp, who is the CEO of a company called Cripple. Cripple recently came out with a brand new product called Cripple Edge, which it actually officially marks the company's emergence as a multi-product company, so no more one-trick pony for Cripple. They continue their momentum and add to their suite of solutions that offers customers choice and control over observability data. So that's the name of the game with Cripple is observability, and it's a great technology, and Clint and Alan talk about how the company is expanding. It's a great conversation. After that, we have a CISO talk. This is one of our regular series here on Techstrong TV. This is part 2 of a CISO masterclass conversation. This one is called Lightning Can Strike Twice. Stop playing whack-a-mole. Adopt a common framework. A lot to unpack in that title. So we ran part 1, I believe, about a month ago. This is part 2 of a 2-part conversation about making cybersecurity simple within your organization. So Mitch Ashley and Matt Newfield are the hosts, and they are joined by Beth Ann Bygum from Axicom and Mike Rothman from DisruptOps, and they discuss the importance of adopting frameworks and having a foundation that establishes a common understanding for managing risk across the organization. So it's a great conversation, very relevant, especially in today's complex IT security environments. Good stuff there. After that, we have our Something Old segment. This is from the recent Predict 2022 virtual event. This one features Uttam Singh Kanduja, who is an engineer at Polygon, and Uttam's presentation is titled Introduction to Web 3.0, and it is exactly what the title says. Uttam talks about the evolution of the web and how the internet is changing, and Web 3.0 is here already. So it's good to know, if you're wondering what Web 3.0 is, or if you're just not really sure, definitely want to check out this presentation. After that, I'm back with the news headlines, and then I have a conversation with Teresa Lanowitz, who is the head of cybersecurity evangelism over at AT&T Business, and we talk about the results of a recent AT&T Cybersecurity Insights report called Securing the Edge, taking a look at edge networks and the maturity rate for applications and edge initiatives that are currently happening, despite a lot of the perceived risks that are out there to cybersecurity, data breaches, and what have you. So Teresa and I talk about the threat landscape when it comes to edge computing and what organizations need to consider. It's a very interesting conversation. I enjoyed speaking with Teresa. After that, I'm back with the webinar's preview, and then we close things out today with the View with Vizard, in which Mike Vizard speaks with Michael Fay, who is the CEO of a company called Island. Island recently picked up $115 million in financing, and Michael and Mike talk about why consumer-grade browsers just don't cut the enterprise security grade, and why that is. So, good conversation there. It's a great lineup, all from beginning to end in today's show. And we're going to get things kicked off right after these commercial messages.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live, one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
All right, everybody, we are back and ready to kick off today's Techstrong TV broadcast. First up is a conversation between Alan and Arnie Lopez, who is the Vice President for Worldwide Systems Engineering at Sky High Security, which is basically a spin-off of McAfee Enterprise, using McAfee's SSE, Cloud Security, ZTNA, and CSAB offerings to create a portfolio for organizations to satisfy the growing cloud security requirements for large and small organizations. So Arnie and Alan talk about what this means for the market, what it means for Sky High Security, maybe what it means for McAfee as well. Good conversation. Let's roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV interview. I am really happy to introduce you to a new company. Well, it's an old company, or an old, a company we've known, one of the biggest in the security space, and new name, new branding, new focus as the company has evolved. Much the same, it kind of reminds me of much the same we saw with the IBM and Kyndryl launch this past year, where you had a startup launching day one on the New York Stock Exchange, right? You don't see many startups IPO on day one. But anyway, let me introduce you to Arnie Lopez. Arnie is VP Worldwide Systems Engineering at a company called Sky High Security. Maybe a new name to you, but you want to hear who they are, where they come from. Hey, Arnie, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Hey, Alan, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, Arnie, I kind of gave it a big build-up, and I hope I didn't build it, overhype it. But tell us, what's the Sky High story? Give us the story here.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the hype. I mean, we're pretty hyped inside of the company, and we've been getting quite a bit of buzz since we did the launch last week. But yeah, the name sounds familiar, right? We had Sky High Network several years ago, and it was acquired by McAfee. I had lots of good friends at all of those companies. At the time, I was with Proofpoint, saw it from the outside. But what many of you might have seen over the last year or so with McAfee, FireEye, and others is those companies, the enterprise business was acquired by a private equity firm, Symphony Technology Group, STG. And they purchased the enterprise business from McAfee, which included all of the CASB, what today Gartner is calling SSE business, which is CASB, Secure Web Gateway, and Zero Trust, as well as the XDR capabilities, which is endpoint and EDR and what now is being called XDR, and FireEye. And what STG has done is they've decided to create two companies out of those acquisitions to really accelerate and be more competitive in each of these growing spaces, one being XDR and one being SSE, Security Service Edge. And that's where we created Sky High Security to be really focused on that SSE market, which, again, the old Sky High Networks was extremely powerful CASB solution, which as we've launched, people are like, yes, you're bringing back that same CASB. Well, it is. But there's a lot more to it now that we've added with some of the internal innovation development, other acquisitions that were made by McAfee to kind of round out the overall SSE solution. So the reason is simple. Trellix was the XDR company that was launched, and then Sky High Security was the SSE company. And really, it's just to be much more competitive, more nimble, and be focused. We have our own CEO in G. Rittenhouse. We have our own Chief Product Officer, Anand Ramanathan, who actually, it's all about connections and networks in Silicon Valley and in cybersecurity. Anand and I have been working together since our days at Cisco, then at Proofpoint. He went off to Sky High Networks. I almost followed him, but decided to stay at Proofpoint, and now we're back together again. So he's the Chief Product Officer. Cool. And then we have a Chief Revenue Officer in Paul Barbosa for Sky High Security. Cool. And then I'm running systems engineering. So with that focus, Alan, we feel that we can be much more nimble and, most importantly, more innovative, and bring new case studies and use cases for our customers and our partners in that space.
Sure. It's funny. I used to like the old Sky High security folks.
Me too.
And, it was real good cloud stuff.
Arnie, though, but look, here's where I sit, right? And I talk to a lot of security companies. I've been in security 25, 30 years. I think it's an acknowledgement that security is a lot bigger than it was when we were all running McAfee or Symantec on our desktops, and we had a Cisco or a Checkpoint or maybe a NetScreen firewall at the gateway to our lands. And as hard as we thought that was, and as complicated as we thought it was relatively simple looking back on it, right? We didn't worry about mobile phone security. We didn't worry about XDR. We didn't even worry that much about laptops, because who the heck wanted to carry those bricks around, right? But unless you were a road warrior. But, it was a simpler time. Today with security, where you have, do everything from anywhere, whether it's end users working on a multitude of endpoints from anywhere, or it's infrastructure that exists anywhere, on the edge, in the cloud, still in the data center, maybe even some in the, in the office, so you don't see it as much. It's anything, anywhere. And so the mission of security, right, the attack surface is just, and the mission of security and trying to secure all that is so much more complex. How can one company possibly be that, big and then still be able to focus in on, consumer desktops or even, corporate desktops, endpoints, whatever you want to call them now. XDR is the term, and then still worry about, cloud gateways and access, IAM, and there's a lot of aspects to security. What are you haven't even talking about? AppSec and all of these other things, right? So too much. And so this to me makes all the sense in the world, right? Let's put the right assets on the right table and go forth and multiply, right? Be fruitful and multiply. So let's focus in on, you mentioned Trellix, that's the XDR company. Let's focus in now on Sky High. You have the old Sky High cloud security kind of infrastructure products.
Yeah.
What else is in the mix there?
Yeah, no, great question, Alan, and completely agree with you, right? The last trends that we've seen, and yeah, like you, I've been doing this for a very long time. Actually started my career doing mainframe security. So now everyone knows how old I am. So we've been doing it for a long time.
I don't hold it against you, dude. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Exactly. So we've seen lots of changes. So yeah, with Sky High Security, as I mentioned, right? So the CASB is a big part of it, and we've got all that rich history and expertise that came from Sky High Networks, several years back. But we've added a secure web gateway to that, right, which is part of SSE, what Gartner is calling SSE, and then zero trust, right? So all of these technologies, these products, really they address the new use cases of those trends that you just mentioned. Alan, exactly, right? So the perimeter is completely different, right? And I used to manage Checkpoint and Cisco PICs, firewall before ASAs, and
I remember those picks were great.
Oh yeah, they were fantastic. Right? I used to keep one in my trunk because I used to do demos for customers, believe it or not. So
you never know when you needed one.
You never know when you need one, right? And so it was easier to, that's the perimeter. Everyone works in an office. You got a wide area network. It's frame relay or MPLS later, moved to VPN, but that's all changed, right? Yeah. Now all the applications that companies' users are accessing are all in the cloud, right? Think about the big ones, whether it's Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow, homegrown apps that a company might be developing themselves, right? You talk about DevOps, and then they're putting it into an AWS environment in containers. So that's where people are working now. So where do you need security? You need the security in all of those different environments. And those are all attack vectors for the threat actors as well, as you mentioned, right? Yeah. And that's what we do. We have cybersecurity for all of those different environments to make it easier for our customers to deploy them, because these cloud applications, first of all, they're expensive. So, a CIO wants to get them deployed and get their team as productive as possible, but they need to do so in a safe way. And that's what we do. We have a single platform with a single UI for CASB, the SWIG, or Zero Trust, right? So that's a lot easier for a cybersecurity team to manage, lower total cost of ownership. We have a single DLP policy engine. So as you know, deploying DLP is a pain in the butt, right? You've got to tweak it. You've got all these different environments.
I would say deploying DLP is an oxymoron.
Oh my goodness, exactly.
Because how many companies
Well, I don't want to badmouth anyone, but I've seen a lot of DLP deployments
they never finish. You're exactly right. They never finish getting deployed, right? So, it still requires tweaking and expertise, but having a single policy engine and enforcement point makes it a lot easier. So I can create a policy around protecting IP, and that could be for a cloud application like Salesforce. It could be for a potentially compromised website or a C2 server out on the web where my users didn't know and they're going there inadvertently. Or it could be in a application I've written. I hired some contractors to write a new app for me. I've deployed it via Kubernetes into AWS, and oops, they left some of the code exposed, providing the same kind of DLP policies there as well, right? So that makes it a lot easier, to your point earlier about how do you do all of this with a smaller staff. And finding cybersecurity expertise, as you know, is also very difficult. I have that challenge all the time, just trying to find talented people to join my team. So we've made it easier with our solutions to do all of that. And our APIs are also very open. And that's something that, was part of the rich history that we got from SkyHigh Networks as well, because we don't think we can do everything, right? Again, we don't have an XDR solution. That's companies like Trellix and Sentinel and CrowdStrike, but we have an open API and an open platform so that customers can integrate our technology into other ancillary solutions that they might be using as well.
Love it. So I guess that kind of, the next thing I was going to ask you was the relationship between SkyHigh and Trellix. With open APIs, it's an even playing field. Any of the XDR guys can kind of plug in.
And vice versa, right? To leverage each other.
But that's exactly right, Alan. But as we call ourselves sister companies under the STG umbrella. We do have a 3-year agreement between the companies to leverage each other's technologies, right? So a perfect example is threat intelligence. Trellix has rich threat intelligence. They also have an existing relationship with Mandiant, which now is a Google company, but the relationship is still there.
Yeah.
Very interesting, right? Very interesting. But global threat intelligence, we share that.
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
It's a tangled web into the cyber world. So you're sharing their Mandiant kind of feeds and a lot of their threat intel stuff. You mentioned, Arnie, a single UI for the Zero Trust, the CASB, and
what was the third one?
And the SWIG, the Secure Web Gateway. Yeah,
the gateway.
Is that something that came right out of Sky High, or that was something that you guys were working on? It had to too soon. It had to be being worked on at McAfee for a long time.
It did, yeah. And we leveraged the Sky High networks, the CASB that they had even prior to the acquisition by McAfee was really nice, Alan. So we leveraged that and then built upon it. So when we came out with our secure web gateway and then recently added Zero Trust, we leveraged that UI because it was the cleanest. We do regular customer advisory board meetings. So we bring in some of our most vocal customers of our solutions on a regular basis, and they have direct access to our product managers, the engineers, and we ask them, what do you like? What do you not like? What is the competition doing that might be better that we should be looking at doing? We ask those types of questions, and they're very vocal with us. So we've leveraged their feedback. So when you log in, anyone that was using Sky High networks years ago, it'll look familiar because we got a lot of good feedback that was the way that they like it. So now the secure web gateway is there, Zero Trust is there, and you can configure all of those from that same UI.
What I find interesting, over the years, like you, Arnie, we've seen companies get bought, companies get sold, companies get spun up, spun out. Every once in a while, you see a case where a smaller company gets acquired by a big company.
Yeah.
But, it's almost like a reverse acquisition. The essence of that smaller company kind of permeates through that bigger acquiring company, and so much of and it becomes that legacy, right? That it's almost like grafting a tree branch onto an existing tree, and then that tree starts sprouting fruit from just that graft, right? And in many ways, Sky High was such a that kind of acquisition with McAfee, right? I mean, look, McAfee acquired dozens of companies over the years, right? But yet, Sky High managed to make such a mark there, leave such an impression. It's what we see today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to be very transparent with you, when I first came to McAfee, which is what who hired me back in 2020, one of the main reasons why I came here was because I knew Sky High was part of the company, that technology, because I was very aware of it, had friends there, as I mentioned. Anand has been a great friend for a long time. I wanted to work with that technology because I'm a geeky kind of a guy. I love working for great companies, but I love cool technology. And that was one of the main reasons why I came. And then when the opportunity came up through the private equity and STG to create these two companies and be part of one, I jumped at the opportunity to be part of Sky High Security for that reason. So you're absolutely right. And now we have the opportunity as a smaller company, to your point, to be very nimble, quick, and innovative. And we've already got some great examples. We were by Gartner in the first ever SSE Magic Quadrant. We were a leader, one of only 3 vendors that were considered a leader. And then in the Gartner Critical Capabilities Report, which is kind of a ancillary report to the Gartner Magic Quadrant, we were actually the number 1 vendor in that report. So we're getting some validation from industry. Thank you very much. We're very proud of that. And it was a combination of some of my team with Anand's team kind of working on that. And we're very proud of that. But the most important validation will be from our customers and our partners.
I just got to clarify one thing, though, Arnie. Yes, you're a smaller company. But this, as I said right in the beginning, this isn't some startup in someone's garage, right? This is more like the IBM Kyndryl. Well, it's not that big. Kyndryl, I think, split off from IBM with $18 or $19 billion in revenue, which doesn't, it's not a bad way to get started, I guess, right? I don't know if Sky High has published sort of metrics, but how, and in any way you want to define it.
Yeah.
Give us the size of the scale of Sky High.
Yeah. I mean, great question. Yeah, we're around 700 employees. So we're not tiny, right? We're not 20 people in a small corporate park, but we're not huge, right? McAfee was 5,000 to 6,000 employees at the time. So we're around 700 employees. So I think to me, it's a good size, right? We're not too big where there's no layers, because we don't want to have any layers, right? Our CEO, G. Rittenhouse, wants to be able to have access by all of the employees, and he's talking to lots of customers directly, and that's the way we want it. Even in my org, some of the SEs and the architects report directly to me, right? We want to be able to be flat and be able to move very quickly. So, but we're not too small where to your point, we're struggling to find, how we're going to, create a channel program, or who's going to, do we have SEs? Do we have enough account managers? Do we have the engineers to be able to continue to innovate and add capabilities to our SSE portfolio? We have that. And we have a lot of that expertise, and a lot of our engineers were part of Sky High Networks many years ago. So we have that expertise. So we have enough muscle and resources to be successful in the space, unlike maybe another much smaller, more traditional startup.
Yep, certainly agree with you 100%. Arnie, we're over time, but hey, man, I want to wish you and the whole Sky High team the best of luck and success going forward. As I said, I think it's a smart move. I think it's something the not just the industry, but the market needs and wants. So we'll be watching. Come back and keep us posted on all the goings on at Sky High.
No, thank you very much, Alan. I really enjoyed the time and our conversation.
All righty. Arnie Lopez, VP Systems Engineering Worldwide at Sky High Security, a new company, or a new old company, as we've been talking about. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, we're back. Next up, Alan speaks with Clint Sharp, who is the CEO of Cripple. Cripple recently announced a new product called Cripple Edge, which expands their product offering and makes them a multi-product company. They have a really interesting technology around observability and managing observability data effectively. So Clint and Alan talk about the technology and what it means for observability in general. Great conversation. Let's roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV interview. My guest for this segment is Clint Sharp. Clint is the CEO of a company called Cribble, Cribl. We've had the pleasure of having Clint on before. We've been covering Cribble. They kind of burst on the scene, and they've been making great progress, primarily because they have great technology. But hey, Clint, welcome back on Techstrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yep. So, Clint, look, we as I said, we cover Cribble, so I know Cribble, but there are people in our audience who probably have not heard of Cribble before watching this. We probably should start there. Give them a quick background, or who's Cribble? What's it about?
Yeah, sure. So we're an observability company. We sell primarily to technology buyers in IT and security. Our flagship product is called Cripple Stream, and we make what's called an observability pipeline. It allows you to take data from anywhere, send it to anywhere, primarily focused on logs, metrics, traces, the type of data that observability and security people use all day, every day. And that helps them reuse their existing fleets of agents to send data wherever they would like. It allows them to control costs by removing noise and waste. It allows them to easily connect new systems into their infrastructure, try out new security tools, try out new observability tools, and really becomes kind of the core of their observability infrastructure.
Excellent. And I mean, Clint, just way of background, I believe you formerly were at Splunk. Is that?
Yep, I spent a little over 5 years there. I've been in this ecosystem for a pretty long time, and there's securing your environment, operating your environment requires a lot of data, and we sell a lot to Splunk's customers. We sell a lot to Elastic's customers, Datadog, people in this ecosystem, and we're kind of a complement to all those existing vendors. Really helping out their customers to get the data into those types of tools.
Absolutely. All right. I think we did a good job of laying that foundation. So, you mentioned the flagship Cripple product, but we're here today, last week or recently, you guys, a new product. These days we call it a product. Is it a service? Is it a product? Is the service a product? Well, all of the above. But you guys have launched a new service/product. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit?
Yeah, it's called Cripple Edge. And so it's the same concept of what we were doing with Stream. In Stream, you use your existing agents like a Splunk Universal Forwarder or an Elastic Speech agent or a FluentD. You send data to Stream, we help you process that data in the Stream, we help you to send it anywhere. One of the things that we were finding as we were working with our customers is they struggle to manage these agents. They deploy them out to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of endpoints. They have to configure them to go scrape log files on disk, to collect system metrics. And that's sort of left up to the exercise of the user, right? Like, do you use some other, Ansible, Puppet, Chef? Do you use, maybe your existing Windows configuration framework? Like, how do you actually tell those agents what to pick up? It was kind of an unsolved problem. And they were really looking for somebody to come in and make management of all of this data collection significantly simpler. And then by kind of shifting a lot of this processing that we're doing in the Stream left over to the endpoint, we can actually save quite a bit of money because there's a lot of excess capacity that's available out at the edge. The average utilization of like a normal virtual machine is, kind of sub, 30%. And so there's a lot of actual capacity that you're already paying for to do all this work sitting out at the endpoint. And we can actually, especially for our higher scale customers, by moving the work from the Stream into the agent, we actually save them significant amounts of money by using that existing capacity. And we were able to reuse all of our existing best-in-class management framework that we developed in Cripple Stream, now then to control the agent itself. And so very, very exciting. We just released this product on March 22nd. And it's already getting traction with our customers, a lot of excitement from our existing customer community, from our sales engineering, from our initial early development partner customers, and seeing like, once again, we've kind of found an area that was really painful to kind of our end users that were being underserved by the market.
Absolutely. So look, we look at everything through this COVID lens these days, right? But, I think back to 2020, right around when COVID kind of broke out, right? Early 2020. And it seemed like edge and the whole edge computing was, it was having its moment in the sun, right? It was really ascending to become, if we think of the cloud and as as one computing center, and we think of sort of the LAN or data center as another computing center or an endpoint. Then you have the edge was really taking on like the third in a three-legged stool, the third leg in a three-legged stool. And quite frankly, through COVID, we shift a lot of focus on digital transformation, cloud migration, stuff like that. I haven't been hearing as much edge kind of conversations lately. But Clint, you guys obviously decided to do this based upon feedback from your customers and the industry, as you've indicated. What exactly, what are the key indicators? What are the lights up ahead showing you that is saying, hey, this is where we need to be?
So we kind of define the edge probably a little bit differently than maybe Cisco does, as an example, right? Like for us, the edge is the place where the data originates. And for most of our customers, that's actually a VM in AWS or a VM in Azure, right? Maybe it's still on-prem or et cetera. But for us, it's really like, okay, this log data, this metric data, this monitoring telemetry type of data that I'm using to run my enterprise, where do I get it from? Well, I get it from I'm monitoring workloads that I'm running inside of my enterprise. A lot of those workloads are in the cloud. Some are still in the data center. And for us, it's really about extending this concept of an observability pipeline that allows you to do this rich data processing, reshaping of data, enrichment of data, and saying, hey, if we have this capacity here, because we know, because I'm already paying this, I'm already paying AWS. When I open up a VM and I put a workload on it and I only use 20% of that machine, I'm paying for 100% of the machine, whether I use 20% or not. And so since we have these resources available to us, we're starting to ask questions like, do we even really need to move this data? So in traditional analytics, it's like, hey, the first step is pick up the data from the edge and actually move that data to someplace central so that I can then go start to analyze it. But if we have all this excess capacity, excess storage, excess compute available to us, what if we could start to actually push the processing of that data, all the way down to where it originates? Then we actually have a great efficiency story, which is really helping us solve the real problem that all Cripple products are focused on, which is this fundamental tension between data growth. Data is growing at a 25% CAGR, but your budget is not. And when I talk to CIOs, I talk to CISOs, I talk to people all over technology buying centers, and all of them are struggling with, man, like how do I afford to continue to operate these systems at the scale my business is demanding with this amount of data growth? Well, then we have to start thinking differently about how we compute. If we just keep doing the same stuff that we did for the last 20 years, centralizing data, moving data, making multiple copies, then we're not really advancing the state of the art. And so our view is really that by pushing this processing out to the endpoints where we have this capacity, we can actually give people access to vastly greater quantities of data that are going to help them answer the questions of the 2020s and not the questions of the 2010s.
Great. And quite frankly, look, this has been a problem. I'm sure it was a problem when you were in Splunk years ago, right? Is for many organizations, the question becomes, just because I can doesn't mean I should, right? We now have the ability to capture and store oodles and oodles of data, right? I mean, but you're right, the cost of storing that data, at some level, we just can't say, okay, well, the cost of storing data is 25% more, so I'm going to put 25%. That's a losing proposition, right? There's got to be an answer, and Cripple's that kind of answer where, how can we be smarter about it without cutting off both arms to save the patient, right? That's where a lot of organizations were before this, right? They would be, okay, well, I can't afford to save everything. Let me pick and choose what I'm going to save. And, sometimes I cut to the bone, sometimes I cut the bone right off. And that was life for many a CIO, for many a CISO, for many CTOs, right? Is they had to balance the cost of data storage to the benefits of the data they were storing, and they had to make hard choices.
Yeah, so in a lot of these, in observability in particular, I think this is why fit-for-purpose solutions end up becoming so important, because the quantities of data that we generate in order to observe our systems is vastly greater than the actual amount of data we're generating that we use for the business, by orders of magnitude significantly larger. And so by being smarter about how we're doing this data processing and using this concept of an observability pipeline to help extract the signal from the noise, that's where we've been for the last several years, giving our customers the ability to say, look, I need every log entry, but man, I'd like to count the number of times that this happened and start to get some signal out of all of this information. And with Edge in particular, by utilizing this excess capacity, a lot of this data isn't even really interesting after 24 hours. And so we can start to use this capacity at the edge to answer questions on classes of data that we could not afford to keep. And I think that in the 2010s view of the world, we centralized data and data got persisted for some duration of time. I keep it for 30 days, I keep it for a year, I keep it for 2 years. In this case, we're saying, hey, what if for some of this class of data, we're only keeping it 24 hours and we don't actually ever even move it before we start to help you get some value out of that? Could we do that? And that's the key innovation behind Edge, and where we're pushing today is to be able to give people just way more ability to extract signal from noise and be able to get value, because operating these systems at cloud scale and microservices scale at post-digital transformation scale, doing that is going to require thinking differently, and that's exactly what we're doing here at Cripple.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And it is, and quite frankly, look, you guys have had some great success, fundraising, product-wise, everything else, because I think you were one of the leaders in recognizing that that's where this had to go. Otherwise, it just wasn't a viable business model otherwise, frankly. Let's talk about, sorry to do this to you, Clint, but our audience is going to want to know, how's this offering packaged up? How do people engage it and stuff like that?
Yeah, so you can get it in our cloud. So you go to cripple.cloud, you can sign up for free, up to a terabyte a day free in our cloud offering. You can download the software and grab it. It is charged exactly the same way as our existing flagship product, Stream. And in fact, if you are a Stream customer, you're already an Edge customer, because they're charged exactly the same way. And so that gets us to fundamentally, kind of, if you ask me, what does Cripple sell? Cripple sells choice. We give choice to our customers. This is another choice that you can make. You can choose to use our agent rather than your existing agents. You can use the same management technology for both. And so if you are already a Cripple customer, Edge is already a product that you own.
Got it. And if you're not a Cripple customer, Cribble, CRIBL.com.
Right?
That'll get you there.
Sign up.
Right. And the free account is a terabyte a day. Jesus, excuse my language.
Geez, that seems like an awful lot of storage or TB a day. I mean,
yeah. So we're a streams processing company. So that's data that's flying by in motion. We find a lot of people get started on our tier. The largest enterprises that we know of are moving, tens of petabytes of data per day. There's a massive amount of data out there in the world. And so, kind of as a big data company, we want to make sure that our free product is big enough that you can actually go get something meaningfully done with the product before you ever even need to talk to us.
Come a long way from floppy disk, man.
Right? Crazy. Anyway, hey, Clint, I want to thank you for coming on and giving us the scoop on Cripple Edge, and encourage our audience. Go check it out at CRIBL.com. That's cribble.com. You can get a free version, terabyte a day. And actually, if they sign up for Edge, they're going to get
Stream anyway, right? So
they get both products together.
They get the whole enchilada here. Yep.
Good stuff. Hey, man, sounds like a real winner on your hands here, Clint. Keep up the great work. Come back and talk to us.
All right. Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here.
Great to always have you on. Clint Sharp, CEO of Cripple, here on Techstrong TV. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, we're back. Next up, we've got CISO Talk. This is one of our ongoing series here on Techstrong TV. This is episode number 25. 25, oh my God. So this is CISO Masterclass Part 2, and it's titled Lightning Can Strike Twice, or Stop Playing Whack-A-Mole, Adopt a Common Framework. Good stuff. Good stuff there. This is part 2 of a conversation that folks who are on this panel talk about regarding making cybersecurity much more simplistic in nature. So, Mitch Ashley and Matt Newfield are the hosts for this episode, and they're joined by Beth Ann Bygum from Axicom and Mike Rothman from DisruptOps, and they discuss the importance of adopting frameworks and having a foundation that establishes a common understanding for managing risk across the organization, no matter what the size, in an efficient and effective manner. So good stuff all the way around, and we all know how complex security has become. So this is definitely a relevant conversation. Let's roll it now.
Hi, and welcome to CISO Talk. My name is Mitch Ashley. I am principal with Techstrong Research and CTO with Techstrong Group. CISO Talk is a twice monthly and also an online roundtable, an interactive roundtable that we do with cybersecurity professionals, executives, senior level folks, thought leaders, practitioners, people who are living and breathing cybersecurity. And our goal in this series we're doing right now, it's a masterclass series called CISO Talk Masterclass, Catching Lightning in a Bottle. We talk about various topics, some of it driven from Matt and some of his work and presentations that he's done on this particular series. So we're excited about doing a series within CISO Talk. So this is a very interactive and engaging kind of discussion. We all kind of freewheel it and enjoy and react to what each other says, and we'll see where it goes. You never know quite where it's going to end up, which is the fun part too. So we're going to do a series of introductions, and I'll ask each of our participants to introduce themselves. Then I'm going to ask Matt to do a little bit more on our topic about stop playing whack-a-mole, adopt a common framework. What a cool idea. Great. Let's start with Mike Rothman, if you want to introduce yourself.
Well, hello, Mitch. Hello, Matt. Hello, Beth Ann. Nice to see everybody. I'm Mike Rothman, president of Securosis, founder of DisruptOps, which is now a Firemon company, and a variety of other things that I can't remember because I'm just a bit older now and my memory is just not as good as it used to be. But I've been doing security in some way, shape, or form for over 30 years at this point, before it was a thing. Frequent guest on a lot of the different Techstrong shows. I guess the one thing I'll say is it doesn't matter what we're talking about. I probably have an opinion.
I can back that up. I think that's pretty true. Great. Beth Ann, would you introduce yourself?
No, thanks so much. And again, thank you all for today's conversation. Similar to Mike, I've covered a lot of the 12 domains that we consider underneath information security. My name is Beth Ann Bigham, Chief Security and Compliance Officer at Axiom. And security's route to becoming a CISO, I think the main thing I like to bring to the table is a different lens, right? Because we are in an aggressive period, and having multiple lenses is really what's required these days. So looking forward to this conversation for sure, because framework and hygiene don't always mean the same thing.
Important point. Yeah, it's and if we're talking to the same people all the time, we're not learning much, are we? So expanding our net, our topic, our circle of colleagues is always a good thing to do. Thanks for joining us. Matt, introduce yourself. Matt's the co-host of this program. I know I've been doing the talking, but I was kind of saving up to let Matt both introduce himself, and then he's going to kick off the topic around frameworks. Go for it, Matt.
Mitch, thank you so much. Again, Matt Newfield. I am the co-host of CISO Talks. We've been doing this for quite a while, and I'm actually really excited about today's episode and the series in general. When we're going in and helping organizations, when I'm coming in new to an organization, I find it very interesting how few times I will join a company and get a good answer to what framework are we following? What is the foundation that we built our cyber program? What is the foundation we built our IT program on? Many organizations, and probably a lot of our viewers' organizations, cannot answer that question. And they may have had a cyber program for a decade. A few of them may have had Mike Rothman style cyber programs that are in the 30 years, and they go back, and I'm pretty sure that program's on a punch card somewhere. But they don't have a framework. And I was giving a speech in another part of the United States about 6 months ago, and I asked this question to a pretty sizable organization, and we'll leave it at that. And the answer I got was very strange. And I talked to this one group, and they're like, we use this framework, and I'm going to make this up. We use CIS. Oh, okay. Then I asked this other group, same company, what framework? They're like, oh, we're a niche shop. And then I'd ask another group, and they're like, we're Essential 8. And I'm like, how is this possible across the board? And then I talked to the CIO and CISO, and they weren't aware that they were using any of them. So when we're having this conversation, really the meat of today's program is going to be with Mike and Beth Ann, helping people understand not only the importance, but the how do you make these determinations? What's the pros and cons? And we're not going to go into detail of each and every one of the frameworks. That would be not only boring and dry, but wouldn't really help a lot of companies. But just the importance of having a common language. And the analogy that I use all the time, and I imagine is apropos for most, if we all get into a room together and we all speak different languages, right? Someone only speaks French, someone only speaks German, someone doesn't speak at all, someone speaks with sign language, but we don't understand what we're doing because there's no commonality, you'll get nothing done and you end up with chaos. And in our world, chaos equals average. All right, so I've laid this thing out. This is where we're going to spend our time today. And, prior to the start of the show, Beth Ann was speaking and we always do these little preambles. And you said something that I find fascinating and I thought we could use to kick this conversation off. And it was framework versus hygiene. And that framework does not equal hygiene. And I'd love to expand. I know Mike's got an opinion on this, as you stated, but I'd love to start, Beth Ann, with you. Just get your thoughts on, why would you make such a bold statement?
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Matt and team, for today's conversation. Frameworks are designed specifically, to your point, Matt, to help define common language between controls. And those controls are, in essence, what we have anchored in, a quality management system, our policies, our standards, our procedures. But what I've found over the years is that there's very few areas of focus where, from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective, we're interpreting that into common behaviors, right? I mean, there is a direct connection between hygiene practices and framework, and then the ability to demonstrate, passing the framework or being compliant to a framework. But when, to your point around, you talk to a CISO, you talk to people that are boots on the ground, and you try to have a conversation around, hey, did you realize that you are helping to demonstrate compliance? Or did you realize that your role in this is blah, blah, blah? There's really no understanding about how the two worlds connect. And as a CISO of an organization that is, sort of like, a connector of companies, one of the things that we have found is we've got to break that conversation down. And I constantly talk to my team, don't use the word controls. People don't even know what the word control means, right? What's your practice? Are you practicing what you do every day, how you perform? Is it demonstrating that kind of adherence? But at the end of the day, we're all defending at the code level, right? And I think that's the issue we have right now is a lot of the frameworks are designed around the policies, the governance, the oversight, and it doesn't necessarily double click on is the hygiene that's connected to that actually working. So CISOs that get it, they're looking at metrics and controls that demonstrate hygiene. So I'm going to stop there for a minute because I can keep going.
No, as could I. And that's an interesting point, and it's very relevant to a lot of the work that I'm doing right now in terms of helping organizations kind of get their arms around specifically cloud security and cloud security governance and frameworks and what does all this stuff mean. And we've done a lot of work with the Cloud Security Alliance, and they just recently updated their cloud control matrix, and and it's a whole list of stuff, and it looks dangerously like NIST, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I really want to get to the point of, there are two aspects that we, kind of forget about, right? And some folks, when they get into a new position, they just think, pick a framework, right? Because then that gives us, as Matt says, the common vernacular that we need. But, and that example, Matt, you used with the three groups within the same organization using different frameworks, they kind of, and you said you talk to the CIO and CISO and they don't know that anybody's using it. It's like, what do you do every day, man? What are you doing when you come into the office every day if you don't know that you have teams that are using different frameworks and different aspects of the business? But that notwithstanding, right? It again, what we don't do good enough, well enough, I guess is the right grammar, is focus on the outcomes up front. right? What outcomes are we trying to achieve? And then you pick your framework, right? Your vernacular, your set of controls, and ultimately the how. And I think, Beth Ann, that's what you're getting at, right? The controls tell you what needs to be done. They don't tell you the how. And that's where we have a major gap right now in terms of taking this practice, taking the program, focusing on business outcomes, which is a huge part of the CISO's job every day, right? Interface with business leaders, help them understand why they need to do a lot of this security stuff. And then we kind of are also in that position of having to manage down to a set of, as you pointed out, Beth Ann, right? Increasingly application-centric developers, right? As we move towards DevOps, what the hell does that mean? Oh God, right? So now I just put DAST in. So if I put something in my pipeline, then I'm good, right? Does that make it with the framework? And so there are just multiple disconnects all through the process, starting from what the hell are we trying to achieve, right? All the way down to, great, does that mean I need to use, kind of AWS code commit as the way to, kind of manage my deployment pipeline, right? And somebody's got to be able to, make sense of this. And that's what, kind of creates the challenge of most CISO-oriented jobs, right? Is that I'm talking to the business folks one day to tell them why security is important, and I'm talking to the developers the next day about, kind of why, the source code analysis tool that they're using isn't getting the job done.
Mike, I think you're spot on with that. It starts shift left, right? We ran an exercise last year, taking a methodology that you use in common development, you shift left with your code, analysis, and we applied it to the GRC space. And the concept here is that if I could push discussion of controls or adherence to practice higher upstream, starting at the contract level, starting at, project initiation, where you typically see it, right? You get your security engineers in there and they're helping to assess the risk. But my own team is talking different languages, right? My GRC folks are assessing it risk against policy, not risk against code. My engineers are. So last year we started a shift. No more. We are defending at the code level. The GRC team is starting to train and learn aspects of engineering, right? So if a project's coming in, it's a software advanced design project. How are they looking to ensure automation of the controls before it hands off to the engineers that are looking at the architecture of the controls? The threat actors have had an ability to be single focused, right? They understand architecture. I forgot who I heard this from, so I can't claim it, but they understand our architecture and our engineer designs better than we do because they can focus on it. And we're just, organizations don't have that same luxury or haven't put architecture back in the space. Architecture has to take lead. And I'm constantly having this conversation with my architect, is that if we really focus on good architecture practices, that helps simplify how much defense I got to do, I'm managing on the back end kind of thing. So the world is coming closer, and we can't really operate in our silo services anymore. We are all connected.
Yeah, you bring up some interesting points. And I think for a lot of people, they would hear all this and it's like, okay, so how do I begin? And, I've heard two key things here. Well, I've heard a lot of key things, but of starting points, we talk about with the end in mind and outcome based. And I could not agree more. We've had episodes talking about why CISOs lose their job, and it's because they cannot communicate with the business owner. Again, commonality is not there. So being able to get those requirements from the business is key. But building out that framework, right? Yeah. Whatever that is, I will, just for Mike's sake, say, everybody's going NIST because Mike is the biggest fan. That is for everything, the thing for him. But building out that commonality is a way for us to start moving forward. So if you're talking to a CISO or you're talking to a head of security that goes, okay, I understand. I talk to the business all the time. How do I decide what framework to use? What do I set as my base, knowing that automation has got to be key. We could spend an entire episode talking about manual controls versus automated controls, especially at the code level. If they're not automated, you're kind of done. Because the amount of money to audit, your milestone gates would just be impossible.
Yeah, I can't.
How do executives start?
Hey, Matt, before we get there, can I just get a point of clarification for you? And I'd love to get Beth Ann's perspective on this too. Mitch, forget you, man. Who cares? No, I'm just kidding. But, we've been kind of using terms somewhat interchangeably, program and framework. And I don't think that's what we intend to do. So why don't can we just spend like a minute and just, kind of just say, all right, when we talk about program, this is what we mean program. When we talk about framework, this is what we mean framework. And because when we're talking about selecting a framework, how does that fit into the program? Does it fit in the program? Is it the program? Right. So, I just think that's a point of confusion that a lot of folks just don't get.
That's a great point, Mike. I would agree with you. As a security lead or a compliance lead or a chief security officer, your program will consist of multiple frameworks. It has to. And so the sweet sauce is being able to connect the multiple frameworks into an integrated dashboard, to Matt's point, that demonstrates my true risk posture to leadership. And then you can start turning the knobs to right size how much remediation we're actually talking about. So yes, I agree with you. I could talk hours going down this path as well. But I think the first question, I think, Matt, that you were asking is the starting place is we have to understand our stacks, right? Again, architecture, but what is in your stack? Are you hybrid? Are you on-prem going to the cloud, or are you a full cloud stack? Are you on-prem dedicated? So what's your build? What's your stack? What's your environment? Who are you serving? Your clients will dictate what kind of frameworks they expect to see. If it's heavy global, you may have to do a blend between NIST and ISO. If you're in the automotive industry, TISAX is coming in hot and heavy, even though that's ISO. TISAX focuses a lot more on development hygiene, right? So understanding who you service, what's your stack, your current environment, what is your business trying to accomplish? So if you have growth, it's amazing. As a CISO, I think we maybe we're one of the few roles in a leadership organization where you have to talk multiple languages as well, internal, right? So speaking to my sales leadership team, what are they trying to grow? Strategic or chief security strategy officer, what are they trying to grow? That may mean I have to acquire more framework certifications to help them achieve their growth targets. So anyhow, understanding the business really is the start of what your framework methodology will be. And then, Mike, you've spent a lot of time talking about the cloud, just the technical frameworks that then support the data protection piece of your NIST and your ISO. They're all interconnected for sure.
Beth, and
you bet.
I think really,
go ahead, Mitch. You haven't said much.
I was just going to say, you connected some really important things. I think you can kind of look in the rearview mirror and go to your contracts folks, and they'll tell you what compliance you have to meet and what frameworks might go with that, or you can at least determine that. That's pretty easy, relatively speaking. It's the looking forward part of where you're going, and I really like how you're saying it starts with the code, because we've all been in security for a while, and I think we've shed this paradigm of it being network centric, right? It's pizza boxes, it goes in racks, it goes in data centers, and that whole stuff, right? When we all started our careers in security at different points. And it's all about the stack. It's all about software at whatever level and anywhere it's at, from an IoT device to what our cloud looks like. And your point about it's got to be attached to where the business is headed, because being compliant with something we needed 5 years ago isn't necessarily going to get you what you need to do in the next year or 2 or 5, right? So we've got to raise our heads out of this kind of security community that we talk to every day and talk to the business to help, maybe even help shape where that's going.
So I think it's important to also think about, kind of the actual compliance and regulatory overhead that we have versus the structure of the program and the potential frameworks that you would plug into the program in order to support the business initiatives, right? So that example, Beth Ann, that you used about I had to sit with my sales leadership to, help understand how they're going to achieve their growth targets, because that will have systems impact. That systems impact will have security posture ramifications to that, which is a different thing than saying we're taking some credit cards, which means we've got some PCI that we got to deal with. What are we going to do on that front? Because that does tend to be rather static. That does tend to be something that you can hopefully put in a box with a bunch of different payment processors now that you just don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff, and with SaaS services. And it's just, I remember sitting, and this was probably 15 years ago, I sat with a leader at a cellular company who said, my objective is to get my PCI scope to 0. Right. And this was 15 years ago. So I said, good luck with that, man. And then it turns out, 15 years later, we're like, wow, if you actually architect your stuff correctly, you can kind of get there. Right. But, more the point is we've got the stuff that the auditors are going to come in and look at, because they're substantiating the different controls, and there has to be a lot more formality around that framework, right? And then there's the stuff we got to do to run our business. And that's where the program and kind of those specific control objectives and those frameworks and those technical things that we have to do to achieve those, that plays in, right? And I always kind of called it, when I was trying to explain it to business people that found themselves in a security role, I kind of talked about two sets of books. Right. And accounting people are like, oh my God,
it's a different show, Mike.
That's right. It's the idea that you've got a set of language and kind of reporting and dashboarding and that kind of stuff that communicates to, kind of your customers, in effect, right? Kind of the leaders there. And then you have the operational things that you have to do to run your business, right? That's who's patching what, where's my hygiene on that front? What am I doing to, upgrade this? And they're two different things, right? Because if you make the mistake of walking into a board meeting with your operational metrics, you will figure out very quickly that you either will not be invited to the next one and probably need to start dusting off your resume, or somebody will, take, or have mercy or show kindness and say, that's not the discussion we're having right now. And again, that gets back to the bifurcation that a lot of CISOs have to have, which is on, one meeting. And it's funny, as we were getting on the call today, but then you were trying to wrap up another call, you're taking a call in there, and it's just like, and I can only imagine one of them is, a senior manager type thing, and you're talking business stuff, and the other is an operational problem, and you're talking to somebody in the SOC, and you have to be incredibly nimble in this role to be able to and be able to context switch almost, kind of seamlessly in order to be able to survive, kind of in the CISO role moving forward.
Yeah, I think that integrated framework methodology, I remember years ago, we started, I just almost had a flashback. We started with trying to merge ISO and NIST, and it was, and then don't try to lay like FISMA, high trust CMMC, like all that other stuff on top of that, right?
Something at windmills, I think that was. That's a tough problem.
I know. So, but I think you're right, Mike. It's amazing to be on a journey where you have to constantly adjust the interpretation of these controls and the framework. And what am I asking my product team to do versus maybe my cloud services team to do, and is there an overlap between those two organizations? And I think we're about to hit a tsunami, actually, because there's still issues, right, at the code level. To your point, Mitch, about infrastructure. I mean, we still have hygiene issues down at the firm level, firmware level, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the question becomes, you've got our risk, program, like the insurance carriers are coming in, and they're starting to see huge numbers that maybe weren't anticipated across industries a long time ago. So that risk appetite is those things are going to be evolving. You've got, the need to really build out security, evolve security teams so that they're speaking risk appetites. They understand the controls from all the different framework lenses. I think we have a little bit of investment to do and reboot maybe in that security space to be ready for the next chapter for sure. And it starts with making sure, if you're selecting a framework, what's its role? What's its purpose? How can you leverage it? How can you maximize it? And then how do you connect them all together? Because it sure as heck is not like this huge inventory of evidence. But like, what is that really showing, right? It shows that you've got evidence, but it doesn't really help management understand, well, what's my risk posture?
Well, and it can show you evidence in this one little area. I always say, if you're really good on the other side of an audit, you can make things look a certain way. Someone's asking for evidence. You go, oh, here's some evidence. They go, check. And they're like, don't look behind this curtain over here. So, as we always try to relay this back to our audience, and what you can hear from experts that we're talking to between Beth Ann and Mike is it's complex. There is not a single answer of, oh, if you happen to pick framework A, if you happen to go with ISO, depending on your business, you're in great shape and the world is going to be your oyster. It's very complex, and there are a lot of questions that you really need to answer. And I wrote some of them down that I really like that you all are talking about. The where are you in the world? The who are you serving, both internally and externally? All the business goals and sales goals can really drive that conversation. So one piece of advice I would give out to new CISOs, people who are trying to become CISOs, is to change your mindset. A lot of people look at this role that some of us here have as cyber is the protection of assets via technical controls, and they forget this entire other side of our world. So you should make sure you're spending time to understand the importance of the programs versus the frameworks around the world. And, to add that complexity, Mike, to your earlier statement, what countries do you deliver in? Because sometimes that will also force your hand on frameworks. And if you don't know, ask for help. We've said it a million times on this show. We're all part of the same team. I don't work with Axiom every day. Beth Ann and I are not part of the same company. Our paychecks come from different people, but we're allies. Mike and I have been allies for decades. Ask for help. Find someone to give you advice, pay for that advice or join some CISO roundtables that are talking about this. Because if you build out that common language, it's not that if you're wrong, you're in trouble. It is you want to be right as often as possible at the beginning because you will waste time.
Yeah, I want to jump on that one for a second because, one of the things that I think we forget is it's okay to be wrong, right? In fact, you will be wrong because we're dealing with a foundation that's constantly changing, right? And if you kind of go at it and it's the whole analysis paralysis thing, right? If you sit there and wait until you have the perfect framework or perfect program or everybody bought in, you never get anything done. You never get forward motion moving. So I've always been one to say, just get going. Right? Understand you're going to be wrong. Understand you have to build that adaptation into your process, right? Because the applications are going to change, right? The platforms, but then to your point, your stacks are going to change. You're going to be migrating to some different cloud platform because some, business unit has some legitimate reason to do that. And that starts to put some pressure on, kind of the decisions you made from a control standpoint, from a reporting standpoint, possibly from a, substantiating against the framework standpoint. So we're not looking for perfection here, right? We're looking for motion. And the whole concept that we're trying to introduce here is that a framework gives you a common vernacular in order to get things moving. But ultimately, you've got to take that framework and said control objectives that go along with that framework and tailor those to your business to achieve the business outcomes that we've been tasked to do, right? That is the mission of the security organization. And we kind of forget a lot of those things because we get into work and we put our fire extinguisher on and we figure out what's burning the hottest on our backside, right? And we deal with that every day. And sometimes, especially in the leadership role, you have to take a step back and figure out what's working, what's not working. Is the framework still appropriate? What assumptions did I make when I made a lot of those decisions? Have those changed? And if you're not constantly being critical about those kind of things, again, really hard to be successful in this role.
Boy, if there's one truth, there will always be another framework, right? Or another regulation. So don't worry about picking the right one. You'll have plenty of opportunity to choose multiple. How about this is kind of our last topic to bring it all together. Matt, you always talk about the community that we engage with to help each other. We're allies in this. Maybe Beth Ann, if you would share, how would you describe the people, your community, the people that you talk with about security, and are they all in healthcare like your company? Are there people from your past roles? How do you build out that network if you're someone that's entering at a new level, a more strategic level in a CISO role?
I think it's a great question, Mitch. My having multiple lenses guide you through right sizing this conversation is so important. So, my most of my experience was in the healthcare sector. And then when I moved over, because I'm in tech and data now, and it I felt like I was having a little bit of whiplash because the expectations about regulation and how do I support multiple companies that are across multiple industries with different regulatory expectations. So I tend to reach out to leaders in all the industries that we support and we collaborate because their lenses are so different. Someone in the automotive industry, and it's funny because they're all regulated, but their needs are very different. And so understanding how they look at issues gives me more insight to how I can look at my own issues. And so that ability to converse across multiple lenses, I think, is so important.
Yeah, I think too, we've, a lot of us are anxious to get back to in-person events. And frankly, the event itself and the speakers and all that are interesting. It's the networking that happens. Yes. That's where you run into, people from other industry, cross-pollination of ideas and engagement and things you hadn't heard of before.
Exactly.
I know, Mike, you like to talk at events, and that's an opportunity for you to connect with people.
I just like to talk, if you haven't figured that one out yet.
That too.
But, and to, kind of pile on to Beth Ann's point there, I think you have to take both a local and a global perspective of things. And obviously, wherever you are, there are people who are doing security where you are, right? So go grab beers, be social if you drink, whatever you do, right? Kind of go grab lunch, a breakfast, a coffee, whatever it is, but get plugged into your local community, because even if they're not in the same business, if it's roughly the same size organization, there are going to be some commonalities, there are going to be some things that, you like. And if you don't know anybody, your show, whatever, ask some of your key vendors, right? Their reps know people, kind of locally that can introduce you to other folks, from a networking standpoint. But I also want to, talk about the fact that when I started in this business, it was going to a lot of shows. It was, and it was just being there for a long period of time. And I just got to know a lot of people. And that, that was more about persistence and longevity than it was anything else. And then what's funny is that, when Twitter kind of started coming on to the scene, and what was this, 10, 12 years ago, what have you, I started meeting other people, via Twitter, and I wasn't, kind of one of the early folks there. But it's funny. I mean, I see folks who are literally graduating from college and starting to interact with everybody. Right. And now I see where they are now. If they're not CISOs, they're one step away. Right. And it was just like, I remember when you were in like security diapers and they were on, basically an accelerated path because they extended themselves. They made contacts with, folks that have been both influencers as well as just in the trenches for a long time. And they really put a lot of their both education and their ability to leverage that network on steroids, so to speak, right? And you just see in terms of their career progressions where they're fairly young folks and they've got pretty big jobs at this point, but that's because even before they were out of school working in, kind of real corporate type of roles, they were already plugging into that global fabric of security folks that want to help. Right? When people reach out to me, whether it's via Twitter, it's like, I want to find a way to help you, right? I want to try to pay it forward. I suspect Beth Ann's in the same boat. I know Matt is, right? In that we want to help. So don't be bashful if you're getting, involved in this thing. I'm not going to sit there with my tin cup and go, "Oh, that's $200," or, whatever's like that. It's like I pay it forward because that's what happened with me. When I started in this business, I had people who helped me, and I want to be able to do that for other folks now, really that next generation.
Yeah, to close. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to do one little thing of merging the comment, Mitch, that you made and Mike, is for the individuals that are just starting. Once you pick the framework, at least you communicate that to your leadership and to the board and measure yourself against that. Give yourself at least a year. And one of the things that I was taught, which I think was so effective, is you have to hit a baseline. So when you start your responsibility, that issue a 100-day report, right? Here is the state of controls after my first 100 days. This is what's working, what's not working, and here's what you're going to see me change against this framework. And that is so important. So I just want to add that to the checklist as well.
I think that's great. And really, to sum that up in one word, it's transparency.
Yes.
Right. We have this fear in our organization, not Unisys, but in our group, CISOs, of it's a collective of not being transparent because that could cause us problems. Transparency is not the cause of problems, right? Yeah. Inaction is the cause of problems. And we have to do that. Mike, to pile on what you were saying to close this out, there are no dumb questions, right? We ask questions, stop. That's it. And, some of them come with more experience or less experience, but they're not dumb questions. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there. I would guarantee that if you're looking at the four of us, we still ask dumb questions today, right? It happens all the time, depending on your perspective, but you got to put yourself out there. You've got to have the conversation and you've got to be willing to fail. And really to tie this back, Mitch, to the beginning, because I know we're out of time and Mitch is the great wrap up here. When we say stop playing whack-a-mole, adopt a common framework, I think what you're hearing from our panel is pick one. You have to do your base work. Don't pick one that has nothing to do with your business, has nothing to do with your objectives, and has nothing to do with what you do for a living. But you have to pick one. You have to start somewhere so that you can build all of what you heard about out within your organization and you can measure yourself to it. So stop waiting, pick one. You have questions, build your network and ask. You can go on Twitter, you can go on LinkedIn, join some of these panels. Most of them are Chatham House rules. And don't be afraid to say, I don't have a framework, I need help. You'd be surprised, as Mike said, how many people will jump out to go, let me help you, because we all got help when we were doing the same thing.
Great wrap up. Thank you, Matt. On behalf of Matt and myself as co-host, thank you, Beth Ann. Bye again. Great to have you on, and we look forward to having you back. Mike Rothman, as always, great interacting with you. You always have the best one-liners, so I can never keep up with you. And Matt, and of course, Matt, thanks for your inspiration on this topic and the others that are part of this master series. So encourage people to connect in the ways we talked about. I'd also suggest go to a software conference, go to a Kubernetes conference, go to a software automation and dev. You go to, stretch our boundaries. Security it's all of it. It's a part of it. So we look forward to that. Please join us again on our next CISO Talk. And we look forward to talking with you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, we're back. Next up, we've got our Something Old segment. This is from the recent Predict 2022 event. This one features Uttam Singh Kanjuha, who is an engineer at Polygon, and his presentation is titled Introduction to Web 3.0, talking about the evolution of the web and how the internet is changing. Great presentation. Really, really fascinating stuff. Let's roll it now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Predict 2022. This session is going to be amazing. And in this session, I'm going to give you an overview of Introduction to Web 3.0. So let's just not waste more time and let's get started with our session, that is Introduction to Web 3.0. So in today's session, we are going to have a look at Web 3.0 and how it is changing our lives. So for today's, the agenda will be, first of all, I will be explaining about who am I and what I do, just a short introduction about myself. And then we will move on to our session, that is Introduction to Web 3.0. So in Web 3.0, first we will be decoding Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. So to understand Web 3.0, we must know how Web 1.0 was, how the internet was created, and in the initial part, how the internet was behaving. And after that, how Web 2.0 came into the existence, and later on, what is actually wrong with Web 2.0 and what is the need of Web 3.0, right? So we will be looking after that, we will be understanding Web 3.0 in more brief, and then we will be also discussing some of the key benefits of Web 3.0 and how people are actually using it. Right? So let's just not waste our time and let's get started with it. Okay, so who am I and what about me? Okay, so I am Uttam Singh. I am right now working as an engineer and product intern at Polygon Matic Network. Polygon is working to scale the Ethereum network. Okay, and also I am an incoming Mytex Global Link research intern in blockchain at Polytechnic Montreal in Canada. So hopefully I will be in Canada in summer 2022 doing my research on blockchain. Other than that, I'm also working as a DevRel engineer at Crypto Capable. I'm also a MLH fellow graduated. I graduated in 2021. Other than that, I am also a community builder. I help Web3 communities and blockchain communities to scale and build their own communities and help people out there. Also, I am a speaker of blockchain and crypto. I love to help people, especially in the Web3 and blockchain department. I love to speak at speaker sessions. You can also connect with me on Twitter. Here is my Twitter handle. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. You can see my Twitter and LinkedIn handle on the screen. So let's get started with our session. So to understand Web 3.0, we must understand what is Web 1.0. So what is Web 1.0? So when the internet initially came in 1990s, people were not having access to, all the people were not having access to internet, or there were no mobile phones like as we have now, right? So Web 1.0 was only read-only web. So in Web 1.0, people would be able to just, it was like a big library, or it was like a big Wikipedia where people could just go and they can just access the information. So there was no communication between two people. People were just able to go to the web or on the internet, and it was just like a big library or Wikipedia from where you can access the information. There was no communication. So in Web 1.0, all the websites were static, not like as we use now, the dynamic websites or interactive websites where we are able to communicate and many of the things are happening. In Web 1.0, it was normal static websites where you were just going and accessing the information. There was no communication. So in the initial part of the internet, this was the Web 1.0, only few of the people were having access, and there was only few of the people were putting information on the internet, and we all as the user were able to go to the web and they were able to access the information, right? So that's why Web 1.0 is also called read-only web. So only the users were able to read. And slowly, the things get started to change. There came JavaScript, right? There came video streaming and all these things, right? So altogether, these things created Web 2.0. So Web 2.0 is also called read and write web, right? So Web 2.0 has the power of capability of reading and writing web contents, right? And slowly, as in Web 1.0, all the websites were static, right? So slowly, these websites has been replaced now with interactive, dynamic websites. And people were able to go to the website, they were able to communicate with each other. Also, instant messaging became a common and a natural thing for users. Everything went online. As you can see that, right now we have social media, so we have podcasts, we have a lot of things that were not in Web 1.0, right? But now we are able to interact with people. And slowly, when we turn from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, everything went online, from shopping to games and everything, right? Right now, if we want to buy something, we don't go to the store, we just order it online. Or if you want any book, we just order it online, right? We don't go to the store. So slowly in Web 2.0, everything went online. And now, slowly, big tech giant companies came into existence, like Facebook or Amazon, or these companies, they created a whole new social media and everything. And also AI came into existence, and there were a lot of dynamic websites, a lot of better user experience. And right now we are also in Web 2.0, right? So what happened in Web 2.0, there were big servers that in which our information was stored, right? So if you are chatting with someone on WhatsApp or anything, if you are using it is all data. So everything is data. So your data must be stored in some servers, right? So to give you better user experience, these companies started to store your data, right? And I think this is not wrong, because you really want to see the feed on your content the most you like. Now, if you are a tech person, you really want to see feed which you like, right? So this started to happen, and these companies started to store all your data in big tech servers. And that was belonging to you, right? And I also think this is not wrong, because you really want to see the content on your feed which you are really interested, right? You don't want to see the content on your feed in which you are not interested, right? So to give you better user experience, the company started to do these things, right? But they realized that they can do a lot with your data, right? So this actually was violating the privacy of users. So what these companies were doing was they were tracking all your data, right? So wherever you go, you were doing, clubbing last night, or you were having a coffee with your friend, they knew each and everything about you. So this was actually violating the privacy of users, and directly or indirectly, we gave them the permission. Okay, so we just don't read those terms and conditions given on the apps or on the website. We just hit agree and continue. And so directly and indirectly, we gave them the permission. So there was no privacy, it was violating the privacy of users. They were tracking each and everything. And also there was trading of your data. So if you are talking to a friend, and if you are saying him that, hey, I want to buy a new phone, right? So these companies know each and everything. And so they just, the next moment the ad shows up, right? So they were actually trading your data, right? And AI these days is so smart that it knows what you are going to buy next. Now, for example, if you recently bought a phone, the AI knows that next you will be buying some temper glass, or you will be buying cover, right? So AI is these days is more smart that it is going to show you the next ad of these things, right? So they know each and everything about you. And also some of the moments that I have seen, like people are talking on the call and they are just saying their friend, and the next moment ad shows up, and they are also just thinking about to buy it, and the next moment the ad shows up. So AI these days is so smart, and these tech companies were, storing all your data, and they were trading it to earn more money, right? And also there were targeted advertisements. As I said, that these companies were storing your data. So for example, if you like some of the content on the social media, they are going to sell your data to other companies, and those companies are going to give you targeted advertisement, right? So this was a controlled internet. So these 4 to 5 big tech companies have all the power, and they are controlling the flow of the internet, right? So also, if you have heard of, there is also data leak breach recently, right? So if your data is stored in a single server and it is leaked, then your data, anybody can have access to that data, right? So also there is a dark web, right? I will not allow you, or I will not suggest you to use the dark web, but also there is a side of dark web where all these data leak breaches and all these things are sold. So people can actually buy your username or ID, your password, or any data that is stored in these big tech servers, right? And also it was totally a centralized internet. It was a controlled internet. All these big tech companies were controlling the flow of the internet. So this was totally wrong, and it was actually violating the privacy of the users, right? So that is why we have Web 3.0. So as you can see on the screen as well, in Web 2.0, everything was connected to a single server, right? But in Web 3.0, this is not going to happen, because in Web 3.0, your data is distributed over whole the network. Right. So as you can see in diagram, in Web 2.0, all your things, all your devices were connected to a single server, and these servers were storing your data. But in Web 3.0, there will be, since the data will be distributed over whole the network, none will have the authority over your personal data. There won't be any centralized server. There will be decentralized server, right? Your data will be distributed over whole the network, and your data even can be stored in any of the devices. That is also the refrigerator or toaster, if they have the internet access, or your mobile phone, if they have the internet access, you can store your data in it. So Web 3.0 was altogether read, write, plus own web, where you could also own your data, or you could actually own your information, right? And this was really, really necessary, because these few companies were controlling the internet. And now in Web 3.0, everyone will have the power. No single authority will be owning your data. You will be your own owner, right? That's why it is called read, write, and own web. Okay, so what actually is the underlying technology behind Web 3.0? Right. So as you can see, like right now in Web 2.0, everything is centralized, everything is connected to a central server. But in Web 3.0, the technology which is used is blockchain. Blockchain is a decentralized and distributed ledger, right? And this is the true beauty of blockchain, that it is decentralized, it is distributed, it is more secure, and it is a private network. And let me tell you that blockchain isn't the only technology that we will be using in Web 3.0. There are lots of other services. There are a lot of other tech stack that we will be using in, but blockchain will be the underlying technology that we will be using, since it will be providing you decentralization, and it will snatch those powers from big tech companies, and you will own your data now. Right. So let's just have a quick recap of what we actually learned and what were actually changes in Web 3.0, right? So in Web 1.0, as we learned, that users could only read static websites. So there was just a static website where people were able to go and read information and take only information. There was no interaction, right? But in Web 2.0, people could actually interact with each other. There was social media network, there was Facebook, there were Amazon, everything went online. There was people were tweeting everything, right? So this was Web 2.0, but in Web 3.0, it is about owning your data. Since in Web 2.0, since a single authority or a single company was storing your data and owning it. But in Web 3.0, you will be owning your own data. In Web 1.0, there were only read-only web. In Web 2.0, it is read plus write web. And in Web 3.0, it is read plus write plus own. So you will be owning, right? So in Web 1.0 also, there were static website, as we talked. In Web 2.0, there were dynamic website, people were interacting. And in Web 3.0, there will be decentralized websites, right? So these are small changes that actually happen, and this is how the tech is actually evolving, right? So if Web 3.0 is all about decentralization and providing you the power, right? So let's just have a quick look at how Web 3.0 will actually change our life. So in decentralized Web 3.0, the internet will provide you more access to the information. So in the decentralized internet, we will having more knowledge and it will be more accessible. So since there is no central authority controlling your data or controlling the government who is controlling our internet, right? So nowadays what they do is they just put down any of the websites. So in in Web 3.0, since they are not controlling the internet, this will not happen. So any of the people who wants to access any of the information on the web, they can do it. So there will be no regulations, right? And also in Web 3.0, our internet will be more private and it will be secure, right? So as I said, that since your data is not stored in a centralized server, you don't have to worry about cyber attacks, since you will be having more protection and control of your data. It actually provides you true ownership of your money and your assets. So crypto is also doing the same thing. It is, snatching the power of the middleman on all those middle companies. We are, removing the middleman, and we are removing the banks, and we just, doing a peer-to-peer network. So crypto is also a small part of Web 3.0 that is shaping the Web 3 world, and it definitely provides you true ownership of your assets and also the true ownership of your money, and also keeping the data safe from data leak breach or any of the information. Other than that, in Web 3.0, there will be no monopoly with the information, right? So what happened recently in one of the election was a social media. What it was doing, it was on there. So in the elections, there are two parties. So what this social media was doing, it was only showing the good things of one party and it was showing the bad things of the other party. So it was actually influencing the decisions of the people, right? So they were actually controlling the. But in Web 3.0, no one will be able to change the data, or no one will be able to change the flow of the internet. So there will be no monopoly of 4 to 5 big tech companies controlling the information, right? And also in Web 3.0, it will be peer-to-peer. So as I said, there will be no centralized server. There will be peer-to-peer network. People will be directly able to communicate with each other. There won't be required any centralized company or any centralized server or anything, or any centralized bank, as well as the crypto is doing that part, right? It provides you, as I said, more and more high security, right? And what happens, high security, no tracking of your location or your talks. Now in Web 2.0, what was happening is these companies were tracking all your location. So whether you are traveling or whether you were with your friends having coffee or anything, these companies know, and they can actually track your location and they can do a lot with your data. But in Web 3.0, there will be high security, since no big tech company will be controlling your data. Right. So this is how Web 3.0, and this is just a small introduction about how Web 3.0 will change our life. There are many more things to come, and a lot of things that will be shaping and that will be changing our lives. So now just have a quick look over the key benefits of Web 3.0. So in Web 3, there will be no usernames or there will be no password. But yes, there will be no usernames or there will be no password. You will own a wallet, and that wallet will have an address, and that address will be your ID. It will be your key to connect with the Web3 world. So what is a wallet? Wallet is basically just a key, or it is just a tool to interact with the Web3 world, right? So if you are going to any of the website, or if you are using any of the webs, you just have to click on the connect button on your wallet, and it will definitely connect you to the DApps. What is DApps? DApps is decentralized apps. So right now we use applications, we use apps, but in Web 3.0 world, there will be decentralized apps, right? So this means that you don't have to worry about your username, your password. We just go to the website nowadays, we put any of the password, and we use a lot of password managers and all these things to store these things, right? So in Web 3.0, you will not have to worry about these things. You don't have to create different login, different usernames, or different passwords, right? So there will be only a single wallet that will be your address, that will be your key to the Web3 world. You just have to click on the connect button. That's it, right? And also in Web 3.0 world, the Web3 is distributed. So as I said, there is no centralized server, controlling the internet, or there is no 4 to 5 big tech companies who have all the powers and who are ruling the internet. And you will be owning your own data, and you will be also holding a piece of the internet, right? Isn't it amazing? In Web 3.0 also, there will be no servers you have to worry about, right? So in this case, like in Web 3.0, server is literally the entire blockchain. and there is no single point of failures because there are thousands of nodes that are connected in a network. So as a developer also, if you are deploying your any of the website, you don't have to worry about those websites going down. Recently what happened to Facebook or what happens to Insta, these things go down. So since there is no centralized server, there is not a single node, right? You don't have to worry about your server goes down because there is no single point of failure, right? So in this case, the entire server is the nodes that are connected with each other, right? So you don't have to, as a developer also, you don't have to worry about these things. And as a user also, your website, your social media account, and all these things are never going to get down, right? And also in Web 3.0, your data travels with you. So things like in Web 3.0, things like, cross game items, cross game music, and all these things come together. If you have heard of NFTs are just non-fungible token that is also a small part of Web 3.0 world. So in this, your data will be in Web 3.0, your data will be traveling with you, right? So also there is a metaverse coming, right? And also right now, as you said, as you have seen, in the music industry as well, people are just deploying their music on a single server or on the single label company, right? But in Web 3.0, these music producers can actually use these NFTs, or they can just launch their own music. They don't have to use those big label stacks or everything, right? So this will definitely, Web 3.0 it provides you a lot of opportunities, and if you will have all your ownership, you will have all the power. You don't have to worry about any of the things, right? In Web 3.0, everything is more transparent, and it is also a fairer network where actually everyone can participate and they can actually take decisions and without fearing of any of the privacy laws or any of the security laws, right? So Web 3.0 is actually more transparent, and it is more viable to people, right? In Web 3.0 world, also the apps will be open source, so you don't have to worry about the apps storing your data. You can actually see the code. You can actually go to these GitHub or GitLab. You can just actually see their codes, since they are open source, right? And also the nowadays as crypto is using. So in crypto, all the transactions are visible, right? So you don't have to worry. All the transactions are visible, so you don't have to worry about your government snatching your money or any of the bad things happening. You can actually locate it, or you can actually see what are the transactions, what is going on, and everything, right? So Web 3.0 is definitely shaping the world, and these are just few benefits of Web 3.0. There are several other benefits as well, and also so some of the people are actually using Web 3, right? So you can also see on the social media that people are actually tweeting about Web 3, right? Web 3 users are actually getting more paid than Web 2 employees. What? Yes, this is really happening. In Web 3.0, the users will also earn. So just unlike Web 2.0, only where the creator was earning or where these big tech companies are earning, only the creator was earning. But in Web 3.0, everyone will go along together, and everyone will be earning, right? So you can definitely explore more about Web3 apps, and you can definitely earn as a user, right? And also people are saying that more I learn about Web 3.0 and develop these decentralized applications, people are actually blown away because this stack is really amazing, and it is evolution of web, right? And everything happens evolution is really necessary. As a humans also, we evolve, and this web also will be evolving, right? And people just say that Web3 is just a high risk. No, it is not. It is not a high risk. It is actually a low risk, right? So it is just an opportunity to rebuild the internet again from the scratch, right? You can build anything, if you have any of the apps, you'll see right now, you can just ask to do it decentralized, right? You can just build it on the decentralized network. Also, the future is that if you have heard of NFTs, right? As you discussed, so in future in Web 3.0, everything will be an NFT, right? So if you are buying an airplane ticket, or if you are just buying a conference ticket or a concert ticket, right? Everything will be selling on an NFT, right? And these crypto, NFTs, DAOs, and all these things are actually the small part. that are actually shaping the Web 3.0 world. So this is actually a high opportunity to rebuild the internet again from the scratch, and you can be the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Mark Jesus. This actually concludes our session, and we have come to the conclusion. So it is more about the evolution of the technology. Everything changes, right? Since Web 2.0 come into existence after Web 1.0, similarly, the internet or the web is going to take an upgrade. So this is the upgrade, and Web 3.0 is the future. And in Web 3.0, everyone will be holding a piece of the internet, right? Isn't it amazing? And everything changes, so does the internet, right? So you will be owning a piece of the internet, and this is the evolution of web. So this concludes our session. Thanks a lot for listening to this session. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you now know what is actually Web 3.0 and how it will change our life. This was a small introduction. Thanks a lot for watching this speaker session. Thank you.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here with the headlines. First on DevOps.com is an article that covers the differences between platform engineers and site reliability engineers. Site reliability engineering teams and platform engineering teams share similar goals, such as maximizing automation and reducing toil, and similar methodologies. But they have different priorities and use somewhat different tools to achieve them. So then, what are SREs and what are platform engineers, and how is each role similar and different? This article answers those questions and more. Platform engineers and SREs both play central roles in automating complex processes and eliminating toil. But they tackle these issues from different angles and they use different tools. The right role for you depends on what you enjoy doing most. And we look at the recently uncovered Spring 4 Shell vulnerability, which is the latest call to action for radically improved software supply chain integrity. As Spring 4 Shell investigations continue, one conclusion is indisputable. We must holistically rethink the way we continuously inventory and manage the complex landscape of interrelated software and its sources. Regardless of whether Spring 4 Shell surpasses the breadth of impact of Log4j, there's still massive potential for severe consequences to software and API security across the open source infrastructure, frameworks, and application software stacks. This article details what the Spring 4 Shell vulnerability is, what it impacts, and what organizations need to do to not only protect themselves against the vulnerability, but also improve the way they approach software supply chain security and supply chain management. In news, GitLab has updated its namesake CI/CD platform that adds epic linking, integrated security training, rule mode for scanning result policies, and a revamped design, among other capabilities, to make it easier to discover the state of the application development projects. The updates are part of an ongoing effort to embed technologies within the CI/CD platform that will make applications both more secure and compliant with various mandates before they are deployed in a production environment. GitLab has also partnered with Contra and Secure Code Warrior to provide content that will drive security training functionality and make it easier for organizations to shift security further left in the software development lifecycle. This content can be accessed via the GitLab platform whenever a vulnerability is discovered. Good stuff. All right, over on Container Journal is an article that looks at anomaly detection in cloud-native applications. From microservices to multi-cloud, modern application architectures have evolved significantly and created new challenges that are drowning engineers and DevOps teams in data and increasing the number of tools they are being required to manage. Today's modern cloud applications are complex, and the IT infrastructure supporting them has become dispersed with multi-layered systems. Add to that the incredible amount of telemetry data that systems generate each day, and the result is a flood of alerts that have now outpaced the human ability to assess and manage it. The ability to detect anomalies now requires a simplified and improved approach that contextualizes application workloads with their environments and the large quantities of operational data. While existing approaches to anomaly detection have existed for decades, they predate the cloud-native era and are limited when applied to more complex microservice applications. This article explores 3 areas of anomaly detection that keep DevOps teams awake at night. Specifically, cloud application workloads and their impact on application behavior, the limitations inherent in relying on a single metric outlier, and how isolating the root cause analysis without context creates remediation challenges. And we have the latest from Docker Inc., which has picked up an additional $105 million in financing that, among other things, will be applied to extend the reach of the Docker container application development tools that developers use into the realm of serverless computing frameworks and emerging WebAssembly and Web3 platforms. This latest round of investment brings Docker Inc.'s valuation to $2.1 billion. That's with a B. Docker believes this latest round of funding should increase developers' confidence that the skills they are acquiring today will be applicable to multiple types of IT platforms in the future. All right, over on Security Boulevard, we look at the role of cloud-based identities in cloud security. Organizations now operate in a multi-cloud world, which allows workers to be more productive and offers the accessibility and scalability that organizations need to keep business operations flowing. But it also creates a challenge: managing large numbers of cloud-based identities. Left unchecked, these can be the cause of vulnerabilities and data leakage that produce security nightmares for the IT and security teams. As more applications move to the cloud, cloud-based identities are essential to allow organizations to enforce a single source of truth for all users, to maintain orderly processes for onboarding and offboarding, and to track access to applications and data. This article looks at the importance of understanding cloud-based identities and their impact on cloud security, and how organizations can get a better handle on the many different identities that exist in multi-cloud environments. And finally, we look at 5 ways in which single sign-on is not the end-all, be-all when it comes to SaaS security. Single sign-on has become a core security requirement for companies that want to implement SaaS security, and it's a popular way to comply with the access control requirements defined in standards such as SOC 2 or ISO 27001. There are many benefits, such as better password policy enforcement, multi-factor authentication, and less time wasted for password recovery, among others. Single sign-on works great for sanctioned applications that have been integrated with the single sign-on solution. However, the world of SaaS has changed dramatically, and organizations are now finding that 80% of the SaaS applications used by their employees are not in their single sign-on portals. The reasons for this are both technical and operational, and the problem is only getting worse every day. This article identifies and examines 5 key reasons why single sign-on is not able to fully solve the SaaS security problem completely. All right, that is it for the headlines. I'll be back on Thursday with a brand new batch for you. I hope everybody has a great day until then, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Teresa Lanowitz, who is the head of cybersecurity evangelism at AT&T Business. Teresa, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes and talking with me today. Really do appreciate it.
Hi, Charlene. Thanks for joining me today. Or thanks for letting me join you, I guess.
Okay, well, we're joining each other. That's all right. I'm all about that. I want to talk to you about edge computing, which is something that we've been actually focusing on quite a bit on DevOps.com and Techstrong TV, but also Security Boulevard and all of the implications of the cybersecurity implications of edge computing. It's a natural progression, at least in my mind, of networking. And with the advent of 5G and all of the other technologies to support it, seems like edge computing and edge networking have both really kind of come into their own. So I'm interested in kind of just having a conversation with you about edge networking and see what you guys got going on, with regards to cybersecurity and the edge. So why don't we start? Why don't you just kind of let's do a little lay of the land. What are you guys seeing in the edge computing or edge networking space right now?
Sure. I really like the way you framed your intro, that edge is even a topic on your DevOps properties as well, because one of the things that we know is that the edge is really a new paradigm for computing, underpinned certainly by 5G technologies, but it is really going to encompass everything. It's going to encompass the network architectures, the infrastructures, the users, the data, and the applications. And so it's going to mean that those developers are going to have to lead with that security first mindset as well. So that's pretty exciting, I think, that you are seeing edge across everything that you're doing. So what we have going on from edge from the AT&T perspective is we recently published our annual AT&T Cybersecurity Insights Report. And this edition, the 2022 edition of the report, focuses on securing the edge. So just want to tell you a little bit about the report and what we've done and how the report came to be. So AT&T has been creating this report, producing this report annually since 2015. And I joined AT&T in 2019. And at that time, there was this thing called 5G that nobody had really heard of up until then. If we remember back 2-3 years ago, 5G was something that people were saying, I'm not so sure what it is, not so sure what it's going to do. And we put out this cybersecurity report, and what we wanted to know was how organizations were going to safeguard and secure their digital assets, such as their applications, their data, their endpoints, once they had this new generation of network in their organization, this new generation of network that was unlike anything we had seen before, more inherent security, lower latency, higher bandwidth, and so on. So that was our 2019-2020 report. Mm-hmm. And then our 2021 report really focused on the journey to the edge. How were organizations safeguarding those digital assets that they were creating and putting on those new networks in a hybrid network environment? So how were they safeguarding their applications, their data, their endpoints in this world of a hybrid network? And now this year, this is a culmination of a trilogy of the past 3 years of the report, where we're focusing on securing the edge. We know people were moving to the edge. We were curious about the architectures they were using. We were curious about the use cases. And we were also curious about the cybersecurity controls in their network functions. Where were they using them from? Were they using them in the cloud? Were they using them on-prem? Is it more of a hybrid world? So that's really what we explored in this report. And we found 3 big key things. One, there's surprising momentum behind edge. And as you said at the top of the introduction, you're seeing this across everything you're doing. So there's surprising momentum behind edge, despite this perceived risk. And our survey participants told us about perceived risks. We're really living in a hybrid world with network functions and cybersecurity controls on-prem and in the cloud. And organizations are looking at what these new cybersecurity controls are going to do for them, but they are also concerned about those legacy controls that they've been using. So what do they need to phase out? What do they need to bring in? What are they going to do for the future? So that's just a little bit about the report and some of the things that we found.
Well, yeah, I imagine there's a lot to unpack in that report, especially if it really is kind of the culmination of the last 3 years of momentum, if you will, in 5G and edge networking as well. So, were there any indicators in the report of whether organizations were maybe keeping up or up to speed where they should be from a cybersecurity perspective when it comes to edge networking?
Yeah, this is something interesting that we found. 75% of our survey participants, and it's a global survey, we surveyed 1,520 professionals from around the world, and they had titles of cybersecurity, director level and above, IT director level and above, and also line of business director level and above. And I want to come back to the importance of that line of business professional that we surveyed. But what we found is that 75% of our survey participants said, yes, we are either planning to implement Edge, have partially implemented an Edge use case, or have fully implemented an Edge use case. So there's a lot of momentum there. But what they also told us is they said, we know there's some perceived risk, and this is their perception. They know that there is a high likelihood of attack. 74% of them said, yes, we believe there's a high likelihood of attack. And we also know what they said is they told us that the attack would have a tremendous impact on their business. So I think that's kind of the good news, bad news, right? The good news is people are moving to the edge. The bad news is they think there's going to be all these attacks. But I think there's another bit of good news there. What they also told us is that they are really planning to invest in security right up front. And if you think about security in the past, security has always been one of those things that has been perceived as, we'll do it later. It's something that when we get around to it, we'll do. What we found out in our research is that every vertical market that we surveyed, and we surveyed 6 vertical markets, finance, healthcare, retail, manufacturing, energy and utilities, and U.S. public sector, every single vertical that we surveyed, the sweet spot for them in terms of security investment for their edge use cases is somewhere between 11 and 20% of their total overall project budget. Wow. So to me, that's really encouraging. They're saying, yes, we know we have to invest in security. We're doing this right up front. We're not going to come, have some sort of event and then come back and say, oh, what can we do now to fix things? So they're investing right up front. And the other interesting thing is, one of the things we learned last year is that the line of business is largely responsible for driving the adoption of 5G. And this is something that we haven't seen before because, most technologies are really driven by the technical side of the house, by the IT operations team or the networking team. So the line of business is driving the adoption for 5G, and that is because they see the need to remain competitive with the edge and with 5G underpinning edge. And the cybersecurity team is right there with the line of business. So to me, that's really, really encouraging because we're seeing those silos erode that have been built up over the past 50, 60 years inside of organizations.
Well, that's great. And I wonder if that's kind of part and parcel with the whole move, the digital transformation moves that a lot of organizations are under and were really accelerated during the pandemic. Maybe they took a real hard look at 5G and said, yeah, we are not going to be able to move forward unless we embrace digital transformation and 5G. And obviously with that comes a very healthy dose of cybersecurity. So I do find it interesting that these organizations, it sounds like they almost expect an attack to happen at the edge. And do you think is that like a PR problem that edge networking has, or is it something else? Because to me that seems, I don't know, like why would they think that the edge would be somehow less secure or more vulnerable to attack than say the cloud or even an on-premises architecture?
I think it's a good, healthy skepticism, and I also think they're being realistic about it. And as you said, the whole idea of digital transformation, which was accelerated during the pandemic, we saw the need for cybersecurity to move from being that really smart technical group of people, a technical issue, to really being a business enabler. And with digital transformation, if you remember 5 years ago or so, prior to the pandemic, anytime we spoke about digital transformation and security in the same sentence, people would say, I'm not so sure about this because digital transformation is what I'm after. Security seems to be a drag on what we're doing with digital transformation. So the pandemic really showed that security had to be the cornerstone of your digital transformation efforts. And I think that was a really positive thing to come out of this. And I think that we in the research that we did, we're seeing that perceived risk And they're very, very healthy in how they're looking at things. They're bringing security in right now. They're not saying this is something that we're going to rely upon the network to handle, even though 5G is more inherently secure than anything else. They really realize that there is this idea of shared responsibility, that you're going to get your network from any provider out there. And you, as the customer of that network, you have to make sure that you're securing what you are putting on that network. So you have to make sure that you're securing all of that data that's out there, that you're securing your applications, you're securing your endpoints and so on. So there's this need for security, and it's very, very evident.
Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of thinking back over the last couple of years, it seems like we've had a lot of things that were kind of, we'd heard about them, but the last 3 years, they really became reality. I mean, 5G, we were talking about 5G and people are like, yeah, it's going to come one of these days, but we didn't really have the technology in place to really implement 5G. And then the pandemic happened and 5G kind of really came into its own. Digital transformation was something that companies would get to when they got to, and now that is absolutely a reality. Edge networking, same thing. Edge networking has always kind of been out there a little bit, but nobody really considered it as a real kind of business, endeavor. But as I said earlier, digital transformation really accelerated a lot of those. I think it's almost natural that cybersecurity becomes a much more important part of the conversation with these organizations, because they're now basically working with 3 new technologies that they had never had before. And it really does require a different mindset altogether. So do you think that edge networking is going to become an even more important element of an organization's infrastructure, and ergo cybersecurity becomes an even more part of the conversation, an even bigger part?
Yeah, most definitely. And if you think about edge networks and the edge use cases, and as you said, the pandemic really spurred on a lot of this. And it was first and foremost, remote work. Everybody was just suddenly sent home overnight, remote work. Now, my old network doesn't really live up to the way my workforce is working. Mm-hmm. And we asked in the survey what types of use cases each of these different vertical markets were using. The 2 biggest that came out were in retail for loss prevention, and in manufacturing for using cameras and sensors on the manufacturing line for visual quality inspection. We also found healthcare. Healthcare was the business, I think, that had to pivot far more quickly than anything else, because we had all of these remote pop-up testing sites. We had telemedicine, and we found that 74% of healthcare organizations that we surveyed were down this path of implementing an edge type of use case with remote healthcare, pop-up clinics, those types of things really leading the way. So we have a variety of use cases that people are actually using. And as I said, people have this healthy skepticism about the reality of what cybersecurity really means. So this is something that is, the line of business is driving a lot of this, saying we really need to do this to remain competitive. So I think what you'll see is that every organization, from the smallest type of business out there to the largest type of business, they're really going to be moving to the edge. And I think what we saw with this report is it's really clear that organizations are moving to the edge. And as I said at the beginning, 75% of our respondents said that, yes, they were down this path of thinking about edge, fully implementing edge or partially implementing edge. And that was really a surprise to us that that number was that high.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised too when you told me, because like I said before, we've been talking about edge for a while, but it was one of those kind of ideas out there or there was specialized use cases and things like this. Now, I think because of digital transformation, and I really hate to keep kind of using that as my cornerstone, but it seems like digital transformation actually turned the way a lot of folks in an organization view IT. It's no longer kind of, a bunch of cables running around and these guys who will, come and, plug in something. It's now really being thought of more as a business enabler. How can I use my technology to advance my business? Edge networking is a natural part of that conversation. And just because of the fact that it is quite literally an enabler for all of these, especially more customer-centric applications and technologies, and just being able to address all of the concerns that organizations customers have, and actually implement new services and products and features for customers. So I think that has really done quite a bit to help further edge networking, and I hope that we'll be seeing even more innovation in the space as we move forward, along with cybersecurity kind of walking the same path in parallel, but at the same pace.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point about edge networking being this logical transition, right? And we're moving from this sort of traditional monolithic IT applications, let's just keep the lights on, where it's really about running our business, to things enabled experiences that customers want to have, that customers of every business want to have. And I think that's evident by some of the use cases that we saw. The remote healthcare, for example, is a big one. Quality inspection on an assembly line in manufacturing is a big one. Loss prevention for retail is a big one. Concierge services for financial services organizations. So it's about thing-enabled experiences. We see that, we've heard the stats that we're going to have more Internet of Things attached to the network than people one-to-one with laptops, tablets, phones, and so on. So that's really what's going to enable that experience. And this idea that we're going to have things be faster because of the 5G network, lower latency, higher bandwidth, more inherent security. And what we're just seeing with the edge is that it is really that idea of that distributed model of management, networks, intelligence. It's software defined. And you're putting everything, your workloads, your applications, your users, closer to where that data is being created and consumed for the edge. And those are the things that are really going to help shape that edge experience moving forward.
Well, I certainly, as I said before, I certainly expect that we'll be seeing a lot more edge computing, edge networking applications, and definitely having more conversations around edge. So let's set a date, and 1 year from now, we'll take a look at next year's report and see how things have changed.
Awesome. It is a date for 1 year from now.
All right. Great. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for taking the time and having the conversation with me today. If folks want to take a look at the report, is it available on the AT&T Business website?
It is available on the AT&T Business website. It is also available on cybersecurity.att.com. And in addition to that AT&T Cybersecurity Insights report, we're also publishing this year 4 vertical reports that are really a double click on some of the data inside of that core AT&T Cybersecurity Insights report. We just recently launched one on healthcare. We'll have one on U.S. public sector, one on manufacturing, and one on energy and utilities.
Well, excellent. We should chat about those also at some point. But thanks again for having the conversation with me today about this report. I do appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you very much, Charlene. It was great being here.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more Techstrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Initech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Initech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Initech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Initech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon and I'm here with the webinars preview. I tell you every single time that we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. And believe you and me, I don't lie. So here are 3 that are happening in the next week or so that you can mark your calendar and join us. The first one is called How to Optimize Kubernetes for Security, Cost, Reliability, and Scale. This one is happening this Thursday, April 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This is sponsored by Fairwinds. As Kubernetes matures and adoption increases, one question keeps coming up: am I doing it right? In organizations with hundreds or even thousands of clusters at work, finding ways to boost the efficiency and productivity of these important areas is critical. This webinar will take a look at ways you can optimize Kubernetes to ensure you are achieving key business goals around security, compliance, reliability, and scale. Good one there. All right, the second one is called Getting Started with Reliability Management. This one is happening Tuesday, April 12th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This one is sponsored by Sumo Logic, partnered with AWS. Keeping modern, complex, and continuously changing applications running is not easy. Most IT organizations operate by going from one fire drill to the next. Reliability management helps shift teams from a reactive to a proactive stance to provide a fantastic digital experience and mitigate service disruptions. So in this webinar will cover how service level agreements and error budgets align your organization, how to get started with reliability management, and how some organizational best practices and patterns that aid success. Another good one there. All right, the third and final one today is called GitHub Actions and Code Injection, Avoiding Vulnerable Configurations. This one is happening next Wednesday, April 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. It is sponsored by Cycode. GitHub Actions is an increasingly popular DevOps tool because of its rich marketplace and ease of use. As part of our research into GitHub Actions security landscape, that's Cycode's research into the GitHub Actions security landscape, it discovered several pitfalls in the workflow that could result in severe security consequences. Unless developers deeply understand the GitHub best practices, these workflows are likely to have mistakes that are costly and could create supply chain risk to the application. This webinar will discuss how Cycode found and disclosed vulnerable workflows in several popular open source tools, delve into GitHub's Actions architecture to understand the possible consequences of these vulnerabilities, and present some possible mitigations for these issues. That's another good one, folks. All right, that's it for the 3 webinars preview for today. I'll be back on Thursday with a new batch for you. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, we are back, and rounding out today's Techstrong TV broadcast, we have The View with Vizard. In this one, Mike Vizard speaks with Island CEO Michael Fay. They discuss why consumer-grade browsers just don't cut the enterprise security grade. Interesting conversation. Island just picked up $115 million in financing, so I'm sure they talk about that as well, what the company's going to do with the money. Good stuff. All right, let's roll it. It's a great conversation.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Michael Fay, who's the CEO of a company called Island. They are making what is known as an enterprise browser, and we think that this is going to be something new and different. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk with you.
We live in a world where everybody uses a consumer-grade browser almost every day for both their everyday life and at the office. So why do I need an enterprise browser, and what exactly is that?
Well, you hit it right on the head. You know, we've taken these consumer browsers that have the definition of privacy, security, configuration, adaptability defined by our consumer needs, and we brought those into the enterprise. And when we did that, in order to secure and support and maintain a great experience and a safe experience, we have had to do all sorts of complex things. If we want to, say, protect the traffic, we have to get man in the middle and unencrypt the traffic and see inside and try and govern it. If we want to protect our data, we have to assume that everything that comes out of the browser lands on our desktop. And we produce all of these expensive, difficult to manage controls to try to keep the data from escaping. And the list goes on and on, from performance management to monitoring to anti-malware. It's just an endless list of very complex tasks that we have to work around this consumer application for. So what an enterprise browser is a browser that renders and delivers the exact same experience you're used to in a consumer browser, but integrates fully into the enterprise. So we can do things like protect our data, integrate into the back-end systems that matter, give our IT staffs the ability to control and configure the environment in a way that makes it safe and acceptable to do business. So now I can support a BYOD user or a contractor with just a log into a browser instead of expensive controls like VDI, desktop as a service, or gosh forbid, shipping laptops. I can think about critical SaaS applications like Salesforce and Workday and our own internal web apps, and think of those as closed loop systems. So if I'm, say, a call center worker touching your, financial data, I can work with it. I can deliver what you need, but I can never take that data. I can never lose that data. And giving that flexibility to organizations has a massive amount of cost efficiency, complexity reduction, but a much better end user experience. And so that, in short, is what we're here to do, building an enterprise browser, is increase that end user experience in an appropriate way for modern technology stacks.
Does that browser still run locally, or is it up on a server in the cloud somewhere, or where exactly is the being executed?
Great question. It runs locally. It's going to look and feel just like the browsers. If you bought that new Mac and you said, I want to throw Chrome on it or Edge on it or whatever it is, or that new Chromebook or that new PC, whatever, it installs locally in user space, so we don't need admin credentials. You log into it, though, but when you log into it, it reaches out to your organization's management console that we provide, downloads your policy, and then that policy runs for those specific websites and applications that you're granted access to via the browser itself. But it's a 100% on desktop solution like you've always had with your browser, but it's got to tie back into that SaaS management console.
What is your sense of how much time and effort, you kind of alluded to this in terms of the technologies that we're using to secure the endpoints today, but from a people perspective, how much time and labor are we spending on that activity as well? Because I sometimes think that the people cost for these things is more than the products, and the stuff that we buy is, only a small percentage of the overhead.
Yeah, when you think about the complexity injected by the browser not cooperating into the environment, it's a massive amount of the overhead. Right now we live in a world to just simplify, just to browse a website inside a normal organization. We have to backhaul all our traffic to some cloud property. where it's going to open it up and do all these things. And then our people are going to analyze that traffic and figure out why it's not working today and what new encryption algorithm is broken. And it is this wild set of complexities because we're forcing an application that is naturally meant to be left alone to be governed by all of these technologies that it knows nothing about. So you're right, the people cost is high. And then there's the people cost of just me as an end user. Every click I have right now is going through a series of checks and double checks and backhaul traffic and all these things. So my end user experience is always worse than if I was outside the organization, just natively connecting to these properties. And that was one of our goals, is to just give back to these end users high-speed performance that's managed easily, that delivers that portal to work, that is work as it should be, simple, clean, efficient.
What made it possible to do this now versus any other time? Because these issues have been around for decades. So what changed?
They have. One of the most important things when you start to think about this is you have to design from the end user experience first. It's not about security first or IT or, it's about the end user. So one of the things that opened up this was the open source project of Chromium really coming of age. So Chromium now stands as the backbone for most modern browsers, whether it's Chrome or Edge or Opera or Brave, you name it, they're all sitting on top of that. So the rendering engine can be shared. So we can go forward with confidence that the end user experience, what they click on, what they see will be delivered in the same fashion. That's the starting point. Then the introduction of the massively hybrid worker. The idea that we have to support these workers regardless of what perimeter or where they work, how they work, and that working from home, for instance, is not some special benefit, but part of the new design, creates both the opportunity and the requirement for such a solution. So we're benefited by the maturity of technology, and we're sped up by the alternate way we're all now working that feels like it's here to stay.
When I look at something like a consumer grade browser today, the look and the feel, I can build an app, but I'm kind of stuck with the kind of design that came with it. Is this more customizable? Can I create more interesting user experiences through your browser that are really corporate centric?
Yeah, most definitely. We can literally change the look and feel of the browser so that it's the organization that's deploying its browser. They're a window, as it were. It could show up as a browser or a window or as a portal. It just depends. But just importantly of that first look and feel, every message you receive is that organization's message. So rather than clicking on a link and it just being blocked, the organization can reach back out to you and say, listen, we blocked that, let's say to one cloud storage platform. We blocked it from that platform because this is our standard, and redirect you to that standard. So the user isn't just trying to test all the edges of the IT stack and find their way through the process, but they can be governed by that. And in the event they need to provide feedback, the browser's ready to give that back to the organization. So they're easy to support. And in a world where we move forward and we're all doing self-IT, right? We've all got our own PC and we're plugging into the environment. We want a natural, easy way to when it's time to work, know we're at work, be able to bring those resources from work, whether they're support staff or applications, into our environment, do it safely, do it cleanly, and be a partner in that process. And we really provide that. It's a unique experience when you're in a browser like this. It feels incredibly consistent with past experiences, but you definitely understand you're at work and you've got productivity help because of that.
You guys have now raised, I think, somewhere above $200 million in total. What is left to be done? What's the priority for that spending? What are you thinking about now?
Yeah, we're very honored. And, even in these challenging economic times, we were able to raise yet again a very large sum of money at an impressive valuation. That spend is going to more R&D to continue on broadening out these solutions, making them stronger and more productive for the community, as well as scaling. We're at a point now where we have product market fit. We're engaged with a couple hundred organizations, and it's now really time to start to cover, both the Americas and, beyond. So we've extended out to Europe. We're growing our sales force. But most importantly, the customer assets are building. So the R&D force and the customer support organization to make sure there's a delightful experience is where the bulk of that spend will go.
Who's in charge of making this decision? Because sometimes I feel like, if I look over the security people, they're kind of attached to their security frameworks, and they may not be thinking about a way to go do something that maybe obviate the need for a lot of that stuff. And on the other end of it, I go look at a DevOps team who's busy building out the apps, but they may not be thinking too hard about what the endpoint delivery is. So who stands up in the morning and goes, you know what? We got to think about this differently.
Yeah, great question. We sell to a bunch of different use cases, whether it's contractor access or the primary browser itself, or what we call critical SaaS. And some of those have different buyers, different owners, different decision makers. Many of the security elite, the CISOs, the directors, they had the tough decision to go take workers and put them on virtual desktops or Citrix environments or lockdown desktops to make sure they could deliver the security and protection required for their business. So they're the ones that can ease those controls and say, all right, we can back off if we have something like this browser to protect. Then we also have CIOs that played a big role in that as well, and their desktop services team and the like. They'd have to often weigh in. So we find it's a mixed bag on who makes the decision based on the use case. It's a security team, it's the CIO, and in some cases, actually the business owners. We're enabling some of the new products that are going to market. Products where, let's say, you have a community being managed. You have buyers and sellers like doctors, online doctors, and you have patients and a company in the middle. It's their business owner that's saying, hey, here's how we're going to deliver a safe environment, productive environment to our doctors so we can get those patients. So we're finding quite a diversified buyer, but we usually do start with the security team as they understand the landscape very well, and they help guide us into who the decision makers will be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the security team is getting closer to the rest of the business? There's always been this divide between security and application developers, and the IT guys don't always get it, although that product is probably getting a little closer than the developers are. We hear a lot about DevSecOps. What is your sense of the current state of the community?
I will tell you that we don't meet with a security team that isn't genuinely concerned about end user experience and productivity. Now, they may not own the experience, or they may not own the productivity, but they are acutely aware that they don't want to impede that. And they understand some of their solutions have, and they didn't have a choice. Protecting the organization and making the organization viable came before some of those decisions. So I do think they're getting closer. I think they care very much, but with the threat landscape where it is, they have to put a safe environment in front of those. And if you can deliver both, a safer environment and a better user experience, a more productive environment, we're finding security teams are rapid to bring us into the rest of the business to try to shrink that divide you speak of, because it's definitely been there. I mean, one of our use cases, we literally call Say Yes. And we called it that because, poor CISOs have been in a scenario where the business brings them needs they have. We want to use this app, this tool. We want to be on WeChat. We want to be on LinkedIn. We want to be on all these other things. But doing so was a security impediment to their effort. And so they had to figure out, how do I say yes to this? How do I not say no? And we're literally giving them that answer to say, you want to let Gmail into a secured environment? We can help you. You want your personal mail into that? We can make that happen. And so we're giving them the ability to say yes, and they are excited to do so. They do not want to be anything. They don't want to be a speed bump. They don't want to be a blocker. They want to be an enabler, but they are bound by duty to protect the organization first. So you have to let them do both, but they're definitely committed to that.
All right, folks, so you heard it here first. We don't necessarily have to do cartwheels to secure those endpoints, and maybe we could have some rational application behavior without necessarily breaking the bank. Michael, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, that wraps up today's Techstrong TV broadcast. Hope you enjoyed today's conversations as much as I enjoyed bringing them to you. Just a quick reminder, starting next week, we are diving deep into the live in-person event pool, kicking off with 2 one-day events in the Washington, D.C. area. On April 13th, we have DevOps Cloud Native Live, and April 14th, we have Cybersecurity Live. And both of these are one-day workshop-style events that have some presentations in the morning and hands-on learning in the afternoon. You can go to techstrongevents.com to check out the agenda, take a look at the speakers we have lined up, including me, and register for yourself. We also have some Initech conferences that are coming up in the next few months. The first one kicks off in Austin in later in April. I believe it is April 27th, and that one is Austin, like I said. Then we have one in May in Dallas, and then going on throughout the year. The one-day roadshow style events that I talked to you about earlier are also happening throughout the year in different locations. So I do encourage you to check out the website and take a look at the locations that we have lined up, and hopefully there will be one coming very close to you. We also have a lot of virtual events coming up throughout the year. So if you go to techstrongevents.com, you can see the full lineup of both in-person and virtual events that we have planned. You can take a look at the agendas for each, learn more about them, take a look at the speakers, and as I said before, just register for them. I hope to see you at hopefully 1 or 2 in-person events this year, and definitely join me virtually as well for them. And until then, I will be back on Thursday with a brand new Techstrong TV broadcast for you. So I hope to see you then. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.